What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up podcast. My name is Cameron McCulloch-Keeble, and I am joined, as ever, by Lewis Crawford. Hello.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Good.
It's now Easter for you, right? Like you're on a bit of a break?
Yeah, break before exams, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously not 100% full doing nothing break, but you've got a bit more time.
It's what we call a guilty break. It's a break that you feel very guilty for taking. Yeah.
The kind of break where you're like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I am.
Yeah.
So how are you spending your time playing with it?
As I say, overly, but I've been playing lots of Witcher 3, Dark Souls, The Ring City, the latest DLC.
Ooh, how is that?
I've finished it now, but it is difficult on a level that I haven't ever had before. I mean, also I made the mistake of jumping into it in New Game 2+. So right. I'm doing the DLC pretty much the hardest, like way harder than it should even be in the first place.
You'll have to bear with the audio this week a tiny little bit. There's a couple of fuzzes in it. I'll try and do all that I can. But Lewis, how have you been?
Good.
Good, excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Well, let us start, as we do every week, with the news. And the first piece of news we have to start with is that Nintendo has finally responded to the problems that are definitely not their fault, saying they are still not their fault. If you're having an issue with the left Joy-Con, as a number of people reportedly were, the response from Nintendo is that this is an issue on the manufacturing side, that they are working towards fixing, but anyone who has problems should send a message to customer support and have their Joy-Con fixed at the cost of Nintendo, which is good. And they say they'll have it back to you within about a week, which is quite fast for a hardware fix like this. It's a shame that it had to happen, but it does seem nice to know that Nintendo are on the case of trying to fix it at least.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it needs to have such attention that they make sure that the next this doesn't happen again, you know.
Yeah.
They need to make sure that the next load are fixed and don't do this. And to be honest, the best thing they could do, which they're not going to do, it seems, is just come out and say, yes, okay, we've made a mistake and we need to fix it. So hopefully they get to that stage at some point.
Yeah, definitely. It would be really nice to have them come out at E3 and go, yeah, okay, hold our hands up to it, do the whole Sony PlayStation taking a bow for a minute, and then go, but here's how we fixed it going forward. It's not really the kind of thing that Nintendo do, not because they're not honest in that sense, but because this is the big one for them. This is the Switch is the be-all and end-all, really, and them admitting that there's an issue with it is kind of a step towards admitting defeat, not that they are admitting defeat. So they have to handle it really carefully, and I guess I just hope that it's fixed significantly enough going forward that it's not a problem.
Yeah.
The next piece of news is that the director of Far Cry 4 and everyone's favourite game, Assassin's Creed 3, has left Ubisoft to form his own studio called Typhoon Studios. He's called Alex Hutchinson, and he was responsible for a few other games as well as those. And we wish him well. I was not a fan of Assassin's Creed 3, but I love Far Cry 4, so he's a bit hit and miss with me, but it'll be really interesting to see what he does with Typhoon Studios.
Yeah, I like Far Cry 4. I think, what was your opinion on Far Cry 3 versus Far Cry 4?
I like them both equally. I think Far Cry 3 is amazing, and I really like the bad guy in it, but it had some flaws, and I think Far Cry 4 is really, really good. It perhaps doesn't live up to quite the peak that Far Cry 3 was, but I think Far Cry 3 was a surprise. I loved Pagan Min. The horror-y bits of it really caught me off guard in a good way. I like them both equally. Yeah,
so hopefully we'll see something to that level.
Yeah, and I'm so excited for Far Cry 5 whenever we get that.
Yeah, definitely.
The next piece of news is that Overwatch, there's a couple of Overwatch pieces of news actually, surprise, surprise. Overwatch is being considered apparently for the Nintendo Switch, though not anytime in the immediate future. Jeff Kaplan, the game director, did a whole bunch of interviews recently because of the BAFTAs, which Overwatch was nominated for a number of things for. And a couple of the questions involved new heroes and new maps and other things. One of them was, is Overwatch ever going to come to the Nintendo Switch? And the response was kind of, not really, but we might consider it in the future. I kind of think this might happen.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen soon, but I think the Switch seems to be selling fairly well. Breath of the Wild has done an amazing job at selling that console. And Blizzard are smart. They're very smart. And Blizzard know when to put something on a new piece of technology and risk it a bit, you know? Hearthstone was a pretty big risk when they ported it to, like, tablets and phones and stuff. And I could kind of see them, like, if they become one of the first big shooters out on the console, they'll really dominate that marketplace. So I think it will depend on how the Switch sells, and a lot of that will depend on how it all goes at E3. But I could kind of see this happening a couple of years down the line.
Yeah, I think they are going to run into some hardware limitations, though, with Overwatch. I imagine it's possible if they can make like a much reduced, like a graphically, reduced form of it. And we don't quite know at this stage how well. I mean, I'm unsure. Have they got the capabilities of having like the servers run well and the games run well and multiplayer in general,
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know. As far as I'm aware, the multiplayer service doesn't actually exist yet. It's launching later in the year, I'd imagine, probably with either Mario Kart or Splatoon 2. But they've got to have some multiplayer service. Certainly it's got to be good enough to run games well enough that they're not going to damage their chances of competition. And
yeah, it just depends with something like as intense as Overwatch. You're counting like so many particles and so many effects and so many things going on at the same time that it's difficult to. I think they will have troubles doing it unless it's a far reduced, like graphically, or they work out some way of reducing the number of, like, I don't know, less players on each team or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the less players thing almost certainly wouldn't work. So I think, yeah, you're right. It would need to be a stripped back version. Either that, or maybe it launches on the next build of the Switch, which is, maybe it's like the Xbox One to the Xbox One S. I mean, it's running at like 900p, I think, on the Xbox One at the minute, so it could probably run at 720 on the Switch. I mean, Breath of the Wild goes to show that the console itself is fairly capable of putting out good tech. It just needs to be very well optimized. So
yeah, but sorry if I can jump in. You'll notice that almost all multiplayer games take a hit graphically, partly because of the difficulty to run, and like that's the big thing really, is how that will affect something like Overwatch. Breath of the Wild is slightly different in that it's a lot easier to make a single player game look good than it is to make a multiplayer game look good. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a very fair point.
On its side, though, being able to, like, I don't know, lay in bed and play Overwatch would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think this is going to happen, but I really hope it doesn't, because I need at least 5 hours in my life where I'm not able to play Overwatch. And if I own a Switch and they put it on there, I'm not going to get anything done. So that was that. And then the next piece of Overwatch news is that there is an event happening on the 11th, which will be the day after this launches. So it will start at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, the day after that this show comes out. We're not really sure what the event is. There's some details that have been leaked from a comic. There's some new skins. There might be a new game mode. Some cool stuff generally coming to Overwatch. Good still that support is being shown to it. So if you are an Overwatch fan, keep an eye on the game over the next sort of week. And that is that. And then the last piece of news, of course, is the big piece of news that happened this week. The big talking point, which will be our talking point. All of the information about Xbox Scorpio was put out into the world. Project Scorpio, Xbox Scorpio, whatever you want to call it, whatever they end up calling it. The details were put out. So, Lewis, what do you think?
It has good specs, at least for a console. It doesn't quite rival a PC, but it will probably at the price. I think that's the really important part. I think Microsoft have made it's going to be a very good console for its price. It's going to be worth it. It's probably going to be quite even competitive against the mid-range PCs, which is really good, especially with the the fancy OS and so they showed Forza playing at 4K 60 FPS.
They showed. I should jump in. They showed a screenshot of Forza, and they showed to Eurogamer and Digital Foundry the Forza 6 engine working on Scorpio. It wasn't strictly the game,
okay.
but it was the engine, and it had been ported. This is from from Digital Foundry, I believe. It had been ported in, I think it was a week or 10 days.
Okay.
So yeah, but it looked amazing.
Yeah, so the fact that it's got a short porting time is really interesting because, based on the specs, it would suggest that they've done some kind of close tinkering, like some optimization stuff to make it run that well. Because the specs aren't as impressive as maybe people thought they were going to be. This console, people were expecting. I think we were kind of led to expect something that was like £700, £800, whereas this is likely to be maybe £500.
Yeah.
Especially with saying it was premium. And I think those people are going to be a little bit disappointed with it. However, if you haven't yet got an Xbox One, or maybe if you, are really wanting the extra power, then I think, it's definitely a good buy. If you haven't yet gone into the console generation, it almost definitely is worth getting.
So we should probably go over exactly what these specs were. So
yes.
Let's break them down. The summary, which is from Reddit, thank you very much, is this. It will contain 8 custom x86 cores clocked at 2.3 gigahertz. It will contain 40 customized compute units at 1172 megahertz. It will contain 12 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM. It will have a 326 gigabit bandwidth, a 1 terabyte internal hard drive, and a 4K Blu-ray drive. It's also cooled in a new way. I believe it has a vapor cooling system which is built into the box.
Yeah.
And there's rumours going round that it's going to fit into the footprint, if not a smaller footprint, than the Xbox One S.
Okay. That's cool.
That bit worries me a little bit, because I would rather that it be the size of the current box and work.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
And I mean, the PS4 to the PS4 Pro was a fairly sizable chunk up, so I don't want them to compete on space if it's going to damage the integrity of the console in any way, which it could do here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm surprised to see them put the power brick. Are they? Wait, sorry. Did you say that they're putting it in? So it's in with the console.
I don't know whether the power brick has been confirmed.
Okay. Okay. The vapor cooling things. I don't know. I think that's interesting. Yeah, there's lots of details, and it's hard to tell just on details alone what capabilities it's got. There's things like the memory that they've got, the RAM amount, the amount of RAM they've got. I would have thought they'd probably put a little bit more in. It's capable. It's just that if they want to make a console that's slightly more future-proofed, then another 4 gigs of RAM would massively future-proof it. Especially because, in the next, depending on what their plan is, in the next 5 years, I'm sure we're going to see games that are going to be crazy intensive, and the RAM will be an issue. But it depends on what, the idea of generation will be.
It's really difficult actually discussing what the Scorpio is right now and what it will be, because what we've seen is spec sheets and details, but we kind of need to see it in motion. E3 is going to be really, really fascinating to see what this console is and what it lives up to. I've got to admit, though, that on paper, some of the details we've heard have really, really excited me.
Yeah.
The thing that was shown to Eurogamer and Digital Foundry of Forza was shown running at 4K, 60 frames per second, locked 60 frames per second, and it was only using 66% of the GPU. And that was the most it got to, according to the Digital Foundry gentleman who saw it, was 80% of the GPU when it got into really difficult situations. Now, you said it yourself, racing games are very frequently used to show off tech because they are very easy to make look good.
Yeah.
But that had me really excited. There was a lot of doubt going around that this console could reach 4K, and rightfully so, because 4K is a very difficult standard to reach. It's literally 4 times HD.
Yeah.
Like, it's all the tech we have that makes HD right now times 4. That's undeniably difficult. And to see that they've definitely achieved it is a really, really good thing. I still have a lot of questions about it. I would like to see more in terms of what it's capable of VR-wise and what it supports VR-wise. That was a big promise of the console and a big promise of the platform.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I mean, it's maybe something that's been a little bit, we downplayed, or maybe we haven't heard enough of it yet. But yeah.
Yeah, or it could be a reveal moment. It's either that they're hiding it a bit more, or they're hiding it to have a few more fireworks. It would have been nice to see some more games, as in some more as in what runs on it that couldn't have been run before. I think Crackdown is going to be a really, really important contender for this console, because the kind of technology they were pitching for Crackdown was based on their online architecture, but if they could actually do more work with the hardware as well, they can make that a really, really important game. And it would have been nice to see that. Yeah.
I'm still in slight doubt over Crackdown being one of these games that's able to run it at 4K, for example.
How come?
It's just I remember ages ago they talked about the server-sided calculation stuff, and I'm still dubious about that. But it's just, from what they're promising, it's going to be very graphically, and actually not even just graphically, but processor intensive. And the console specs that they've released, it would be able to run it at 1080 with no problem, but 4K is a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit iffy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It all depends, because I think, one of the things that consoles can do that, say, my computer can't, is that they have very minimal OSs. They're not running a million things all the time like my computer is. And, they can switch everything off when they're running a game, which most computers don't. And that allows you to have really...
Till then.
Games that are, really powerful, even though their specs maybe aren't as good as a PC. So you can't quite compare... say the Xbox Project Scorpio specs to a PC specs, because it's hard to say exactly what's capable of the Xbox Scorpio here. The specs don't necessarily mean too much alone, so it's hard to say. I mean, the other thing is that they can tool. They've used, I think, a similar, or maybe the same processor. It's like a modified processor, the one they've got in the Xbox One.
The Jaguar architecture.
Yeah, which some people are annoyed about because it is quite old. But the nice thing about it is it means that that's probably one of the reasons why you said that it didn't take too long to port the games, is because I imagine the same optimization that applies on the Xbox One will apply roughly on the Xbox Scorpio. Or whatever it's going to be called. We still don't know what it's going to be called, right?
No, they haven't announced a full name for it. I was going to ask you your thoughts on the name for it, but actually I think that would be that might be good for our E3 predictions. So I'll hold off on that one.
Okay. All
right.
Yeah.
I have a thought or two. The thing that the one area where I disagree with you is you say that you think this is going to be good value for money for what it is.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Scorpio is going to be pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking at $650.
Okay.
If not higher.
Yeah, because then, like, so if you go higher than that, you are starting to get into regions where it's not good value for money.
And
yeah.
I'm not saying that it'll be bad value for money, as it were, but I think it's not going to be priced in the way we're used to seeing consoles priced.
Okay.
It's going to be priced like a premium machine, and I think there's a number of reasons for that. But the reason that I would say is I think they need a wider gap between the Xbox One S and Scorpio.
Okay.
I think a small gap really undermines both of those consoles. If you have Xbox One S at 300 and Scorpio at 400, who is buying the Xbox One S in that situation? Or who is buying Project Scorpio when they just want an Xbox? Like, those two price points kind of cancel each other out to some extent. I think the people who just want into the console generation will always have the opportunity to go for the S because it will be the cheaper entry-level model. And the Scorpio will be the kind of, you bought an S last year, now you want something, you know.
Yeah.
The S is basically the gateway drug to what Scorpio will be. And I think as a result, there needs to be a higher price point. Not for the purposes of consumers, but just to make it look like there is a much wider difference in what it can do, which there will be.
Yeah. But I mean, it depends. I mean, like, it depends, I guess, if you're a little bit cynical then of if they're a little bit cynical of their consumers though. As in, like, I feel like if they price it outside of its value point, because I think it is probably going to be around about a console that should be about £500. Or at least $500. Who knows what it'll cost by the time it comes over here. But, like, I don't know. If they price it too high, then it'll be like the same situation that happened with the Xbox One and the PS4. So I'm a little bit dubious about that. But I do imagine that we will be finding out at E3.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's going to be an interesting year.
I know, right? E3 this year is going to be absolutely fascinating.
I have to say, if Sony manages to win it again, then I don't know what they're like. This is the thing: Sony are now in a position where they know that Xbox is going to kill it, unless they do something.
I don't know. It's so worrying though, because like we've said now a couple of times on the show, there are two. Right, this is Xbox's year to win. No, year to lose, and Nintendo's year to lose, right? They both have something to prove. They both have something that's strong that they're fighting with.
Mm.
If Xbox comes out with the big guns and shows people what they want in the same way that Sony have for the past few years, then Scorpio could be a massive tide turner for them. Because people, like, the S sold really well. Yeah. The S actually started to be competition for PS4, and people were holding off on the S because the Scorpio was announced at the same time. If they pull this off, they pull it off strong. But if they don't, the kind of battle that Sony will have to fight will be so less as a result. And
yeah,
man, the state of Xbox after E3 this year will be genuinely fascinating to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm very excited.
Definitely. And I think, like, it is going to be interesting to see, you know? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But, I mean, like, the good thing about this, at the very least, is that, as I said to you earlier, like, the Xbox One and the PS4 were both released in conditions that were sort of... They weren't at the height of the generation. They weren't at the height of tech capabilities at the time. You know, when the PS3 and the Xbox 360 kind of were at the time. And this at least means that hopefully the PS5, the Xbox 2, whatever, maybe they'll go back and it'll be the Xbox 720 again.
I would genuinely love that.
But whenever this happens, hopefully they'll at least now maybe push it to being better, because I think while the consoles are both great, and I truly believe that they're both great, but like they both struggle in their current form to run like 1080 at good frames per second. The hope is that this will drive the next console generation to be all the more better.
Yeah, it was a big thing at the time of Xbox One and PS4 that people were saying that we're never going to see a generational jump like we did with PS4 to PS3, Xbox to Xbox 360. The jump from standard to HD was huge. But actually, it was more the jump from the start of one generation to the end of the other. Like, if you look at the Hitman that released at the beginning of those generations and Hitman Absolution, the jump inside that generation is so unbelievable. And so the question is, will we ever see another jump like that again? And I think we probably won't. But will we see the end of a generation very much be the launch pad for the next? Like, will we be hitting 4K stably by the end of this generation? And if so, what does that mean we can build on for PS5 and Xbox 722/Xbox One 2, whatever it is?
Xbox One 2, I like that.
Yeah, Xbox 1.5 and a half.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something we will see actually, in terms of like a generational gap, will be physics in a lot of sense. So like, although physics is very good right now, in general, I mean, like, you break down a wall in a game and every single particle remains and it all has like a random pattern and it's not like pre-rendered or generated in a certain way. When we get processors that are capable of doing that kind of stuff, that will be like the next generational gap will be, individually handcrafted hairs, animated bricks. I don't know.
No, but I mean, like, you are actually like saying things that make a lot of sense. What the big limits to what video games can do now is that they are built to react in certain ways, and so, like, it's actually one of the problems that's plagued Mass Effect to some extent is Mass Effect's characters have been built to react in a certain way, and people are unhappy with how they're reacting, and so it's drawing people out of the experience as a result. But yeah, you're right. When we come to a point where something can offload that processing and that crafting to the machine, or the architecture, whatever it be, you're right, we will be making a big jump from where we are now to what is next. Ironically, however, the thing you described, where you hit a wall and it breaks in a way that is not pre-rendered and is designed by the architecture, is quite literally what they advertised for Crackdown. So who knows? Maybe come December, we'll be in the future.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good place to leave it on, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable.
It always is. And I can't wait to get everyone around for E3 this year. It's going to be... I don't know. It's going to be one of the more interesting ones we've done, and they've all been pretty damn good. Yeah, definitely.
And I'm super stoked for it, to be honest.
Dude, it's going to be great. And so much overcooked. All of the overcooked.
So difficult. But yeah,
I know, but it's so good. But we'll leave it on there. Thank you so much for listening. If you did and you enjoyed what you heard here, please considering dropping it a like so that we know you enjoyed it, because that's always lovely. And you can always subscribe to it so that you don't miss an episode. We put out one of these every Monday at 6:30, and we've been doing so for a number of months now consistently. Thank you to all of those people who have listened to it. We really appreciate it. Lewis, I will see you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Have a good one, and until then, bye everyone, and the game's up.